right, guys, so for today, we ended up replacing the entire fuel pump assembly on this already twin turbo 370Z. And as you can tell, what I have in my hands here is a very early version, probably version 1 of the CJM billet hat. So this setup's been on here for quite some time, and the fuel pump failed. It had has a Walbro in there, some sort, probably the 450. I'm not sure if it's the 274 or the 285 part number, but essentially it just cut out, it died. It would work intermittently here and there. And what we found was something we've seen in the past is the wiring, particularly on the ground side, gets way too hot and damaged. So what we've done is we've done a few steps. Is we're actually now running overkill gauge wiring on the inside. There's not much we can do on the actual connector side of the fuel pump. That's all essentially 14 gauge wire, but everything else we've done either 12 or 10 gauge wiring, and making sure we have a really good ground for all this stuff. But you can kind of see here, I'll pull this connector off and you'll see how hot this thing got. So there's the wiring side. It's melted that sheathing, the insulation right off the wire. And if you look on the inside of the connector, you can see how hot that pin got. So just about charred it and starting to melt it almost. So again, there's a few things we're gonna do to help and prevent this. Using that 285 Walbro fuel pump does produce a little bit more heat. And if you're also using the Hellcat version, doesn't have a check valve in it, you're gonna be creating a little bit more heat because they draw definitely more amperage. So with the twin pump setup we've just installed with the CJM canister, we're doing the 450 274 part number as the primary, and we're using the 285 part number as the secondary, since the secondary pump is only going to be activated with a hop switch. So once it's under load and making boost, the second pump will kick in. So we're going to run it as is. Let's take a look and see how much it affects our tune. So more than likely, it's probably going to be on the richer side. So let's find out. All right, so we made a few pulls. You'll hear the very first pull we did on a low boost, this thing was slipping pretty good. So today, unfortunately, I ran out of the V. It's what they use at the drag strips to prep the surfaces. My dyno roller is super old. It's a 2007 model year Dynojet 224. And yeah, the knurling on that thing's seen better days. So if I don't have my VHT prep on there, that thing will just spin. So I had to throw a couple of bodies in there for now. I gotta go get a little bit of tire dressing until that stuff, belt dressing until the VHT stuff comes in. So, but nonetheless, we got some good data and we were able to do what we needed to as far as redoing the calibration slightly. So at the top, you'll notice that it actually richened up. Nothing too crazy, but enough to warrant making a change and addressing it. And the other thing, because of our dyno situation, you're gonna notice that it's not making as much power. And I've plotted vehicle speed versus engine RPM, and you'll see why I do that, because that's how you can tell you're getting slip and you're saying, hey, why is the car not making power, or what's going on? Sometimes you can't even detect you've got a little bit of slip, and it can dramatically change the numbers. So, but nonetheless, we got good AFR data. We're gonna compare it against the very last pass we did on the same map, no changes, and let's do that now. All right, so this is from basically about a year ago when we were just doing a little checkup on the car. And our second graph, we have our AFRs, and this is where you begin to notice a difference. So blue is before, red is now, and you can see how we are richer with our second pump, and blue, it was a little leaner. So back then with about 7,200 RPM, we were at 12.4 and 11.6. So these, numbers are pretty good, but what we've done is we're gonna go ahead and just lean it out a little bit, typically target like a low 12 AFR on E85. And the bottom graph is what is depicting the speed versus engine speed. So speed of the vehicle speed, what we're actually doing, and our engine RPM. So what you'll see is a big gap difference between blue and red run. I've spoken about this in another video we've done, but this is how you can actually measure to see if you're getting slip. So even with two bodies in the back of this thing, you're gonna see we still have quite dramatic slip going on, and you'll see how it has a good little valley here, and then it kind of comes back up and starts to hook up. So this unfortunately isn't giving us a good indicator of what it's making currently for power. And you want to be careful adjusting your AFRs too much when you're not getting full load, because the engine's not getting loaded entirely. Your boost pressure can change, your AFRs can also change. So we're gonna leave essentially this stuff here. You'll notice it's a little bit leaner here, and it's probably because it's not being loaded as much. So because the engine is not seeing that load from not slipping, we're basically, not getting a good indicator there so much. So you can tell that this definitely richened up way up because of that as well. So we'll go ahead and we'll get our dressing on there and just double check everything again. But that, anytime you're doing anything with your fuel system and you're changing anything like that, it's a good idea to always double check the state of the tune. So in this case, job accomplished. We are ready to get this thing back on the road. All right, guys, we have got another Zona Green GTR all wrapped up on the dyno. And as usual, these turbos don't disappoint. One of my favorite stock stock engine turbo upgrades for the R35. Yeah, thing is they just perform. You don't have any lag over stock, so just amazing. Basic supporting mods on this thing. This one just has drop-in AEM fuel pumps, the ID 1300 cc injectors, 3-inch intakes. It does have the AMS intercooler upgrade, the street version, and yeah, really not much more to it. Stock transmission. This bad boy on 91, we've got it about 650 wheel, and on E85 we're making 850 wheel. So 20 pounds of boost on 91 octane and about 25 pounds on E85. So there's definitely more that these turbos can do. I mean, we've pushed these turbos to almost 950 wheel. Not something I would recommend, of course, on a stock engine. And that was with a car that had a little bit more supporting modifications, but we've gotten there. I think we've done like 930 on a stock engine. So, not too far apart from that 950 figure. All right, so in blue, we have our 91 octane. Both graphs, you can see our torque is nice and flat. We don't have anything which is gonna make it easier on the connecting rods. And, keeping that right around 650 and below for the torque. So just beautiful. We've got our boost doing our closed loop boost through EcuTech. We've got our boost exactly where we want it to. So we start to bring it up at the higher RPMs. That way we can maintain our torque. So again, the beautiful thing is with a built motor and a built trans, you could give it all the sauce in the mid-range, as long as you've got good tires, of course, and you can definitely make this a lot meatier in this area. But since, of course, we are on a stock engine and trans, we want to be mindful of our torque. So that's what we're doing here. And the beautiful thing, again, like if you're running just straight 91 octane, you're gonna be making the power you would be on stock turbos on E85. So that's really cool with the upgraded turbos. On 91, you're making what you were with E85 on stock turbochargers. So yeah, and our power band just keeps going and climbing. So that's the beautiful thing about these turbos. So perfect turbos for a street car. Even the Zona Reds that we did, great match. The AMS Alphas, the 9s, really great turbo setup as well. All right, guys, on today's episode of the VR30, we've got a 2018 Q60, just about to hit 103,000 miles on this bad boy. So essentially what it came in for is walnut blasting of the intake valves and the, because they get gunked up, especially with this amount of miles. So we got those bad boys cleaned up, added an AMS heat exchanger to this thing, and all we did was put an Ecutech tune on it, calibrated it on the dyno, and it's amazing, obviously, what the tune can do for these things. So baseline 315 wheel, really healthy motor for 103,000 miles, and we picked up basically 90 wheel peak. So we're just over 403 wheel on this bad boy. So it did really good, and keeping it simple, you still get really good results with this platform. All right, guys, we are back with Peter's 370Z. This time, Peter sourced a brand new cog setup from Alex out of Taiwan. A really nice setup. I know Alex has done a few really nice innovative things with the supercharger belt and pulley system on these cars. And thankfully, we did about 8 passes on this thing, and the belt has survived. So we did a little tweak. We tightened it up a little bit more based on Alex's recommendation, and used a belt supplied by Alex. And so far, it looks pretty good. It does walk around a little bit, but you can barely even get a pass or two. Last cog setup we were testing with Peter. So for power, did really well. This pulley setup is a bit bigger, so it's not making as much boost as it used to. So the mid-range isn't quite as good, but we really are out of steam on the SI compressor wheel. Really, it's time to go to a different setup like the TI and see if we can make a little bit more power and not have to spin this thing as hard to make as much, which will be even easier on the engine. So I know that's going to be Peter's to-do list, so we'll do that. But nonetheless, really good power, 18, 19 pounds of boost. That's a lot of boost, more of that power. But with these supercharged setups and this SI wheel, it takes that much to do that power for this setup. So it's really making a lot more. These supercharged engines really eat up a lot more power than what they're actually able to put out. So until next time. Okay guys, for today, we've got Zach's 2009 370Z drift car, and Zach's got it set up on some nitrous. So got it in, did our EcuTech calibration for straight 91 octane without any nitrous. You gotta make sure that is all dialed in really, really well. And once we made sure we had a really good base tune for that, we went ahead and turned on our nitrous system. This one's using a Nitrous Express kit in conjunction with the NOS controller, which is really, really badass. It's a little small LCD screen type thing, and you can basically select how you want the nitrous to kick in. It also gives you a readout of your engine speed, and just another way to make sure that you have your nitrous working exactly the way you need it to. Nitrous is fantastic, great way to add power, but with that, you need to make sure it's being controlled and used as intended. So what I mean by that is you just don't want to throw it in, turn your bottle on, run the system. You got to make sure your bottle pressure is where it needs to be. You want to make sure you have a way to purge the system so you have fresh nitrous right up against the solenoids, so it gets immediate nitrous to the nozzles, which of course goes straight into the engine. So started off with a 50 shot, get our feet wet. Kit worked exactly as it needed to be. Made tunes for the 50 shot to make sure we had the proper AFR and ignition timing. So it is definitely recommended to make sure you lower your timing when you're getting started and get a good baseline for your AFRs. So we did that. We got our AFRs in line, and then also super critical with the forced induction and nitrous tunes is that you're listening for knock and not just praying and hoping that the ECU picks it up, because sometimes it may, sometimes it may not. Sometimes it thinks it's knocking when it really isn't. So listen for knock, especially super critical with nitrous, and able to get our ignition timing up a few degrees, and so far so good. So after we did all that, we popped in some 70 horsepower jets. I'm a big fan of leaving it around 70 horsepower, especially if you're just gonna be running 91 octane. 100 octane is doable. You know, you start getting into a lot more nitrous at 100, especially for a fogger setup, and kind of get leery. So really about 100 is max is what I'd like to run on a fogger setup. You can go higher than that, but then you start to see diminishing returns a lot of the times, and then you're also, you know, you don't know what cylinders are getting a certain amount of nitrous, right? You might have certain cylinders that get way more nitrous than the others, and you can start getting into problems with that. So with a small shot, around 70, like that, pretty reliable setup, as long as you make sure you got, you know, good fuel pressure, good nitrous pressure, and you have a tune dialed in just for that. So with that being said, we popped in our 70 horsepower jets, and boom, the system worked exactly as intended, and it got us, you know, right over, just enough over 400 to the tire with a 70 horsepower shot. Car did really well. Without any nitrous, we almost did 330 wheel, 329 to be exact. And with the 50 shot, we were right up close to about 380. And with our 70 shot, we were right over 400. So everything's working really well. The difference, you know, and that's the thing, like, you know, we tuned it for that 50 horsepower shot. We threw in those 70 horsepower shot jets along, of course, with the fueling jets that you need, but we still found that you still need to calibrate it all, and you just can't assume, hey, it's just another 20 horsepower shot, I can just run it as is. So it definitely ran a bit leaner, and we made our adjustments for that 70 horsepower shot. So we can have different tunes based on if he wants to run a different jet size. So let's take a look at that dyno chart. All right, so in green is where we ended up with our 91 octane tune. So 329, 264 foot-pounds of torque. And the next pass in blue, that's our 50 horsepower shot. So you can see if you take the cursor, we're about 50 horsepower almost all the way through. You know, nitrous is starting around 3,500 RPM, and we're shutting it off at 74, so just before red line. It's critical that you have it shut off right before red line. You don't want to be hitting the rev limiter with a nitrous system. It could be catastrophic. And then finally, our 70 horsepower shot in red, and you can see everything's really, really happy. It's typically what we see with a 70 horsepower shot, and it's really good. So 401 and 363 foot-pounds of torque. So we have it progressively kind of coming in 50%. We're not giving it 100% beans right away, but this is perfect, exactly what you need to get those tires lit up for drifting.